Welcome back to the Group Practice Accelerator podcast, brought to you by Polaris Healthcare Partners, where we leverage decades of healthcare and business experience to drive successful group practices just like yours. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur and you're interested in building, scaling, or exiting your group practice, you've found not only the industry's leading resource for business education, but a team of trusted advisors dedicated to helping you achieve and exceed your goals. In short, the team at Polaris creates clarity, confidence, and results. I'm your host, Jamie Falash, and the Group Practice Accelerator podcast is on the air. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again this week. I'm really glad you all tuned in because we're going to talk about a subject that too few businesses spend time thinking about, and that's supply management. And before I get right into that, a quick comment. A lot of what we help Polaris clients with, particularly within strategic consulting and fractional COO programs, falls into what we call, I'm air quoting, optimization, which is a really broad way of saying, let's fine tune the business and not only grow, but let's protect your cash flow. We're maximizing value, said another way. And regardless of your exit timeline, whether that's 2025 or 2035 and beyond, those dollars, meaning every dollar, matters. So we want to be deliberate about this function of the business. And oftentimes, as we see groups start to grow, their eyes are firmly fixed on that next acquisition, or maybe it's a de novo build. And we have a lot of cooks in the kitchen when it comes to operations and supply management, and really no efficiency baked in at location one as it needs to be for scaling best practices. But the good news is there's a really simple and scalable way to manage spend and the many functions of supply management. So I've invited an expert to join us today from Method, who lives and breathes this world. And I'm excited to share her advice and resources with you all. So please help me welcome Alison Farber, VP of Sales at Method. Alison, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jamie. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, glad to have you. And I really should have introduced you as Alison Farber, wearer of all of the hats, because I know you, and I know that there's a lot more to your role in the landscape at Method than sales. So thank you. We appreciate having you.
That's one of the benefits of being part of a lean machine type of team. And I really enjoy wearing all of the hats and getting my hands around the business the way we do. I know that you and I sync up in a lot of ways that way, but that's not quite exactly what you want on a business card. So
a lot of words, wearer of hats, cat herder, you name it.
Yep, exactly. Oh man, I love your comment too about optimization and what you guys do, because we're just chatting about this before we hit record. And I think the first thing that when we think about optimizing, I always talk about the 4-to-1 ratio. When we're looking at how we're running the business, when you're earning $1, really what you're bringing back to the bottom line is maybe 25 cents, right? 33 cents if you're doing really well. Most people, it's somewhere around 25 cents. Some people, it's a little bit lower. But when you're saving money and when you're optimizing and you're looking for ways to reduce your spend, every dollar that you save is a full dollar. So when you're looking at that impact, I mean, really it's outsized because it's a 4-to-1 ratio versus what you're trying to bring in earnings. I think that when we're looking at the really cool, sexy things of like adding more chairs or we're acquiring another practice or something like that, sometimes we forget about those things, but they really matter. So anyway, that's why I'm excited about what you guys do and why I'm here. So.
Oh, absolutely. And we're excited to have you because like you said, those dollars, I mean, that directly impacts your EBITDA, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a really big revenue impact. And I want to get into that and how it's critical to the business. So we talk a lot about optimizing, as you said, and we do that a lot on this show, and even optimization before sale. And why is that? Why is supply spend such a critical metric for the business? Well, we can plan to answer that, of course, and that and more. And I don't want to limit our discussion to just supply spend because I think the overarching issue is more spend management, like you and I have talked about. And for our listeners, really that covers a lot more territory like procurement, savings, efficiency, budgets, and operational costs. So with that, can you, first of all, introduce yourself a little bit? I think we skipped past that part. And then tell our listeners a little bit more about Method, and then I've got some good questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been with Method for, 4 years now, 4 years and change. And really, I've been in charge of really putting us into the marketplace position that we have been. Prior to that, I've actually had a background a little bit in dental and then a lot in software and procurement as well. So procurement is a core piece of spend management, but really what we do over at Method is that we're looking at delivering a lot of these efficiencies to dental practices specifically. So, making sure that they are not only ordering supplies in a convenient and cost efficient manner, but also making sure that they're impacting to all of their locations, everything that you mentioned, being able to make sure that we're keeping track of inventory, reinforcing budgets, managing formulary, making sure people are buying the right things at the right time from the right suppliers. It really creates a lot of scaffolding and infrastructure to build your business on top of so you can focus on those kind of sexier initiatives. So that's really what we're kind of doing behind the scenes. It's been really fun to see the dental industry mature in this way over the past couple of years. So it's been fun to lead that charge.
I'll bet because I don't know about you, but I've seen the Wild West of supply ordering and it's not pretty and it gets really expensive. If I'm a listener and I've got an emerging group, I've got a few locations, we're looking to grow, we're looking to optimize, why should I care about this aspect of the business? Why is it important?
Apart from that 4-to-1 impact that I mentioned before, I like to think about this procurement and spend management specifically. I call it the triple play. So there's a lot of ways that you can optimize the back end. And I might be biased. I hope I am. But when we look at supply management, spend management, procurement, there's three different things that happen concurrently. The first thing is as soon as you implement a system and a structure, you're bringing down your supply costs. So for group dentists, group practices, you really should be looking at a 4 to 5% supply budget margin. Anything beyond that, that's spend that you shouldn't be doing. So anytime that we can bring down that percentage as a business, that's immediately money back into the cash flow, right? You're funding your business by saving. And unlike other areas where if you're trying to earn more, you eventually hit limits, right? You eventually run out of chairs, you run out of operatories, you run out of staff. You're always finding other places to save and to negotiate down. So that's the really cool thing about supply costs. That's play number one. The double play here is implementing cost avoidance. So every time that you do those things and you make those decisions, that decision's helping now, but it's also helping future proof your business. You're not going to be paying those costs in the future. So anytime that you're doing that, that spend is allocated for. So you're operating at 4%, you're putting that system in place. Mhm.
Okay. And I was asking you to pause. Can you tell our listeners exactly what cost avoidance is? That might not be a term everyone's familiar with.
I like to think of it as like insurance for not overpaying. Like it's a very fancy phrase for like, okay, I'm saving money now. And you know what? I think a long time ago, Jamie, you and I were joking about the difference between dieting and Ozempic. And that's a really good comparison here. Most people, when they're thinking about their budgets and their supply spend, it's because it's after the fact and they're like, oh no, I have to do something reactionary to bring this back down.
Okay.
As beforehand, like if you're taking budgetary medication and putting it in place, then you're actually putting that barrier there so it prevents you from overspending, right? And that's what
Proactive
your
versus
system
reactive.
solution does. Yes. So it's more of like moving from a dietary method to like more of a preventative medication method where you're avoiding all of that after effect.
Got
So, yeah.
it.
So
Okay.
we're avoiding future costs by future proofing our business by putting its structure in place.
Perfect. Thank you. And sorry to make you pause there, but I wanted to make sure our listeners understood that. Okay.
Sure. No, that's fine. And I'm sure that that allegory didn't quite land exactly what I wanted it to, but we'll
We get
roll
what
with
you
it.
mean. We get what you
We'll be
mean.
fine. So I mean, that's play too, is that we're bringing down our supply costs, but also we're setting up structure to make sure that that is staying within the rails. Any decision that I do now is going to happen in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And any subsequent decisions that I make to bring that down are going to happen in later years as well. So it's not something that I have to come back and revisit time over time over time.
Not
Um,
quite autopilot, but as close as you can
yeah,
get.
it's as automatic as you can. And there's always ways that you can come back and finagle with it. And when you're looking for cash flow, you absolutely should. right? When you're looking for something like that, you should definitely renegotiate your contracts. You should definitely look at alternate supplies that might be cheaper, but you don't have to do that in order to have your day-to-day operations happen. And then the last part of this triple play is like the operational impact. So we're talking about bringing down supply costs today, making sure our supply costs are in line in the future. They're a little bit more predictable, even with there being problems economically. There's always supply chain disruptions. Right now, we're talking about tariffs and what that could do. A couple years ago, it was COVID disrupting supply chain. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? It creates that predictability. And then operationally, that predictability really helps when you're looking at the valuation of a practice because we're creating some sort of infrastructure that we know what we're going to buy. We know we have protections against it. We know that every practice is doing the same thing at the same time in the same way. And that really helps with when we're looking at a practice's valuation. And I'm sure that you're the expert here. So please come in on that part.
Well, absolutely. And that is something that we talk about a lot too, that proactive versus reactive client, right? Our fractional COO executive, Aiden Bradley, who goes into these groups, these locations physically himself to implement operational and changes and optimization, he sees exactly what's being spent. He sees how these locations operate. And sometimes it is exactly like the Wild West that you and I described. No spurs involved. I mean, it is everyone's ordering from wherever they choose. They might have 50 different vendors depending on size. And there's no cost containment there. So they're not actually working with their vendors in the right way. And without that piece in place, you're throwing money away. So I was really excited to have this conversation with you. And when I take a look at the perspective of the office manager, the director of operations, the owner, whoever is doing the ordering, because that can change from location to location. I've got a lot of other things to do if I'm that person. So, why should I pay attention to spend management? And what do you see working well in terms of making that work consistently?
That's a really good question. And I want to go back before I answer that to the cost containment portion, because I think that that's a really important piece to expand on, which is a lot of folks that I talk to think that they're doing what they need to be doing in cost containment because maybe they have some negotiated pricing or they have rebates in place or they have a percentage off or something. That's great, but that's tip of the iceberg because what we're talking about here isn't a 10% discount, right? Or certain rebates coming back. What we're really talking about here is deeper than that, where we're actually looking at your overall spend and comprehensively in several different areas attacking this at once. So I want to make sure that the listeners aren't conflating getting a discount with actually doing the due diligence with cost containments across the board. If we're an office manager, what does this do? It creates a system. And it creates a system that it's one process. You're not going from website to website, calling rep upon rep, all that type of stuff to get your supplies ordered. You're not looking continuously in the storage room or the stock room to figure out what you should be ordering. You're not doing lookups on budget to make sure that you're staying within there or forgetting about it and then getting in trouble later. Like all of those things happen on autopilot. So you log in, you place your order, you're done. And then you go back to normal things. So if you're working at the practice level, having something in place that you're trained on and that is set from the group down to the office location, that makes something that makes a lot more structure. The other part of that is that you can train to it. So all of a sudden, it's not somebody, if you lose staff, right, which happens,
Sure.
if somebody who's ordering your supplies goes, now you have a system to train on. It's not all that information in their head, it's on the computer, right? They know it's not the relationship leaving and then having to rebuild everything. It's right there for them to just sit down, plug in, go ahead and order. And also, you can even see what was ordered last time, or 6 months ago, or 12 months ago. So that's really helpful just from a day to day execution standpoint.
And then if I'm that office manager and I sit down and I'm looking at the platform, can I see different pricing from different vendors?
Oh, you bet. We advocate for a multi-supplier approach.
Okay.
That is, fancy way of saying shop around. To equate it to something that's a little bit more familiar with all of us, being able to normally you go into a grocery store and you see several different types of peanut butter and you grab your favorite peanut butter. Or if you're economically shopping, maybe you buy the house brand or something that's on sale.
Okay.
What this does is basically it's having you simultaneously walk through multiple grocery stores and looking at peanut butter at all of the grocery stores to figure out which one you want to buy and comparing it that way. So it's saving you time because you're shopping multiple storefronts for your item, and then it's picking the best, most ideal way to purchase those. So when you're placing your order, our average practice single location saves somewhere from $900 to $1,200 just by splitting up between those different storefronts. Same items, it's still through their trusted vendors, but it's just by being able to take what normally takes time and instantaneously do that that drives those margins down.
That's great to hear because the one thing that jumped into my mind as a former clinician was I want the instruments that I want. I want the supplies that I want. I have my favorites I developed over the years, and I don't want to use private label for everything, although for some things it makes perfect
Sure.
sense.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then what about like if I have a distributor that I like to work with and then some things I'm buying direct?
Yeah, and that's all doable within our platform method. Now, there are some others out there that they're a little bit different. There's some that are marketplaces, which means that you're not going to buy from historically your preferred vendors. There's others that maybe move what you buy or change out some of the items. So you do have to be careful with which vendors that you're working with. But at Method, we have a phrase that it's we're not changing what you buy or who you buy from, we change how you buy. And
Oh,
so implementing that system is just changing how you're buying things to make sure that you're making the most economical, efficient orders possible without changing your vendor relationships, without changing the items that you're buying, unless that's what you're choosing to do within the system. And I think that that's really important because we want to make sure that the integrity of supply chain is intact. People deal with their vendors, they have relationships. There's other things that come with supplier relationships. Some groups have equipment servicing, some have deals on like their lab spend, whatever that might be. We don't want to disrupt that because we're looking to save a couple of dollars. We want to make sure that that integrity is there. On the flip side of that, we also want to make sure that the buyers have a little bit more leverage to bring to the negotiation table. Just because you have those preferred relationships doesn't mean that you should be held hostage to pricing, right? So that's how we open up multi suppliers so that you can take that data, go to your preferred vendors, negotiate things down so you can continue delivering business to them. And they're happy to take it and continue to work with you. But really, you're looking at marketplace information and being able to negotiate from that. So that's really what we want to do.
that's great to hear because there are so many wonderful reps out there that have been supporting practices, been supporting groups for the length of their career.
Mhm.
And to uphold the integrity of that relationship says a lot about what you guys do. On the same side of that coin is the ability to get the best pricing and still work with people that you love.
Exactly.
So, very important. Tell me how e-procurement can solve for things like what about budgeting, efficiency, which kind of rolls into the same category, and then inventory management.
How much time do you have? Let's focus on the first one. We've been talking about budgeting a lot, so we'll just go ahead and finish this one. One thing that e-procurement tools do is that we put budgeting up front, right? So you can program as an owner, you can program these systems, these softwares to have your budgets front and center. And any e-procurement tool worth its salt will actually look at what your budget is, what your budget remaining is, and remind your users or enforce your users to adhere to that budget before they place orders. Now, traditionally, if we don't have something like that, we're looking at budgets after we spent, usually 3 to 6 months in the rears, and then trying to like coach to that. And it's not terribly effective because it's in the past. And it's, well, I did that. Maybe that's not quite consistent with what I'm doing now. It just makes the conversation a little bit different.
Well, and from a scalability standpoint, it makes sense to set it up correctly from location one. And that was my next question to you before you move forward is can I set that up by location? Maybe I've got a 10 chair location here and maybe I've got a 40 location.
Yep.
Chair
Yeah.
location. somewhere
Yeah,
else.
absolutely. So you can configure it by location, and then we can even do it down to like a department level. So say that you have an overall budget, but then you also want to slice and dice it. You want to look at a specialty or a certain segment or something because you really want to keep track of that level of spend.
Yeah.
We have that ability to configure that all the way down to those specifics across locations. We can even put some guidelines and stuff down all the way down to the users so that now we're looking at making sure that things are staying in budget. Maybe you have a formulary or you're trying to get a formulary off the ground. We can manage down to make sure that they're adhering to formularies. If you have certain practices that might be the bad kids, you can police them a little bit. And on the flip side, we have controls in there so that when things are within budget, they're from suppliers that we like, it's all approved items. We also, from a scalability standpoint, allow those things to auto approve. So really, I'm digging a little bit into that efficiency part that you mentioned, but really we're looking at, okay, let's isolate that budget, let's execute against it, and then let's control it as much as possible and optimize it as much as possible. So we're only focusing on the weird questions, the outliers, and fixing those problems. That's where we want to be as a group.
And it all comes back to hard revenue impact. So that's
Mhm.
why I understand you keep coming back to efficiency because it really does have an impact on your valuation at the end of the day.
And I mean, one more thing about budgets too is that what we're really looking at, especially if you're one of those Wild West practices, right? You probably don't know what your budget should be or could be. So I have a lot of practices that say, hang on a minute, let me get some of these parameters in place before I introduce an e-procurement solution. And that's actually a little bit backwards. Put in an e-procurement solution and then let that data and those purchasing behaviors influence and guide what your practices are already doing. That way you can work on data collection and you can start implementing these things piecemeal, right? So that you're optimizing as you go along. And if you're doing that with a software, it does it automatically. So you can make decisions at the corporate level and have it go to all of your practices. And you can start to really start to look, ingest, and make those changes easily instead of having to sit there and coach every time you're in the location or have conference calls and Zoom calls trying to get people all aligned. That's the efficiency of software is really being able to implement those things.
Well, and trying to roll it out later on, it was certainly easily doable. But as I was mentioning before about our fractional COO executive, he goes into locations where they might be three locations, they might be 10 or 20 locations. And something like this is not in place. So, A, they're not saving money. They've got a different person ordering different supplies at different locations, not efficient. And I think when you have this in place and assigned individuals to manage this type of thing right up front, it really does impact the efficiency of the business. And that's really what we're looking for in terms of the impact to cash flow.
Yeah, I will put a little asterisk next to that. If you're already bigger than that and you haven't done it yet, it's not too late for you.
Oh,
But I do have a customer that I think highlights that really well. When they first came to me a couple of years ago, they were at 4 locations. They implemented this. They had somebody who owned this internally and said, okay, this is going to be my job to roll this out. We call her the practice admin. She's the guru of method, but they got quite a bit of investment behind that. And over the past, I think, 2.5 years, they're well over 30 locations now. And they've been able to implement this and just cookie cutter every single place. Now, these are acquisitions. So being able to cookie cutter an acquisition is like magic. But this is one of those things that they don't have to worry about because it's so easy for them to implement it. It's honestly one of the very first things that they do because unlike changing like a PMS or doing new procedures or anything like that, this is something that you can literally go in, train on for 2 hours, and you're good to go. And
almost.
then you immediately start seeing that come in.
Yeah, almost like a not quite plug and play, but pretty much plug and play. And practice management systems, of course, as we know, aren't that way. So we don't go changing them out just as a blanket practice when we're acquiring groups. But it sounds like this is pretty much simple to set up right out of the box.
Simple to set up, and then if you make changes later, that's fine because they're all tied together, so you can actually go ahead and do that. You set it up now, and then as you scale, things are gonna change,
Mhm.
and so you need to find a solution that scales with you, which, we do really well. I'm gonna go off topic, but there's something that we didn't discuss that I think is really important here, which is how quickly you can get to an ROI with making changes to your spending behavior. I think a lot of times at a practice, when we're making changes, we're looking at that long-term fallout of, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to recoup the costs in 6 months or 12 months or something like that, right? Even with back-end systems, we're looking at insurance verifications. We're changing that process. Okay, that's going to come back in 3 months. I'm going to go ahead and change my marketing and I'm going to see my leads eventually change in 6 months. When you're talking about savings and spend management and e-procurement, as soon as you make those changes, that is money that's being actively spent. And so when you make those changes, that ROI happens immediately. And you start seeing that hit your books within the next month, the next 2 months, the next 6 months. So if you're looking for a really quick way to start getting cash in, that's why I like my partnership so much because usually, selfishly, procurement's usually the first thing they go to because it's easy and
Yeah.
it's something that immediately shows value in return. So going way back to the top of why should I care? If you're caring about cash flow, this is something that you should do like right now because the longer you wait, the less money and runway than you get. So, okay,
Yeah.
back on. But like that was a weird little sideways thing. But I think that's really important when we're considering the advantages and disadvantages of implementing something is sometimes we get so caught up in that long-term reward that we don't look at something that's easy to execute and is very short-term, but has long-term impact.
Sure. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because everything comes with a cost. But critical to mention is how quickly do we see that return on investment? And like you said, that is like snap your fingers, it's there next month.
It's there next month. It's easy. I can just shove it into the closet until I want to worry about it again. And it just runs in the background continuously. This isn't something that we have to baby or maintain or come back to all the time until we're ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we got one portion that we kind of skipped over because we went down some rabbit holes, which we're great
Yeah.
about. But what about inventory management? Because that's kind of a big thing. Let's
I love inventory management. And because I love inventory management, it's because most people hate inventory management.
glad you love it.
Um, so, I mean, let's talk about why people hate inventory management because traditionally you have to run it. Now, the flip side of this is if you aren't running inventory management, do it. So, cautionary tale here during the wildfires that happened last year, I actually had somebody come in afterwards because they weren't running inventory management. And unfortunately, their practice was impacted and they didn't know how many assets they had on hand for insurance claims. So they had to go back through the hard way and go through what they were purchasing and then try to think through how much they might have used by the date that they lost the practice. So having something that is time stamped there, even if it's you do it as a cursory thing once a quarter, that's going to help you should the worst happen. Now, most people's practices aren't going to burn down, so that's great. But having something that you know what assets you have on hand is also important financially, right? This
Absolutely.
is something that's going into your books as goods that are going to be used. These are things that you can count as future profit. When we're thinking about running day to day inventory management, a lot of practices that don't have just in time inventory. Just in time inventory is exactly what it sounds like. This is not a fancy term.
I was about to ask.
This means you have the things that you need to get the job done, no more, no less. And that's important because a lot of practices like to buy deals. They like to think, okay, I'm going to use those. They like to hoard. And I saw your face there, Jamie. Were you,
Sure, I never did
we
that,
both had
Allison.
experience on that in the practice. And what that results in is a lot of waste. You have goods that expire, right? You have things that get lost. You have things that walk off. And that ends up becoming avoidable costs to the business. So when we're thinking about our just in time, we're ordering just enough to get through the next 2 weeks of practicing. Or if you're really good at it, the next month. And what that does is that limits that risk of having things in your inventory running out. Now, the flip side of that, people get a little bit nervous about over ordering, right? And that's why I think having a system in place that tells you how much you've ordered and helps you look at what your inventory has been doing is really beneficial here because you can look at how much did you order of this item last year at this time and you can see trends and you can start to really control and manage and look at that budget and you can really start to see the ins and outs. If you're not running inventory, then you're going to be missing out on that quite a bit.
One thing that I want to make sure that you mention, because I saw this on your LinkedIn, is the little scanner tool.
Ah, God, I love the scanner tool. Yeah.
Excited. If I'm in the practice, I'm running out of something, I don't want to have to make a mental note to then go back, make sure that this happened. If I can
Yeah.
scan it, it takes it off my plate.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of this one, and if anybody ends up going to, events where we actually set up a little going back to your Wild West, we actually have a shootout using our tags where people get to win cowboy hats, and they have to run inventory faster than their competitor.
I love this.
Anyway, we introduced a scanning technology, because we wanna make sure that ordering supplies, managing inventory, all that kind of stuff is efficient as possible. One of the most inefficient things ever is sitting down in front of a computer and going into a search bar and looking up items. I hate it. Our customers hate it. What we did is that we actually have scanners that we sell, just like at the grocery store, same kind of device. And we went through all of our items, about 900,000 items, and we gave them a distinct QR code. And so what this does is that it recalls it not only when you're in the shopping cart, so you can scan things straight into a shopping cart, but also that can control your inventory management. So now instead of going through and, writing out the thing, saying how many are in there or anything like that, you can run a very efficient tagging system. So last tag, tagging system. If you don't have it, you put a tag on that last item. When that item's the last one you're pulling off the shelf or that tag's the first one forward, you put it in a bucket, and then when you go to order, you pull those tags out. You write on the back of it how many you're supposed to order. There you go. But it makes it so that you have a system in place, and with us having a software backing it up, that's full recall. Hey, when was the last time I ordered this? Scan the item, it's going to pull it up. Hey, I need to put this into my inventory, scan the item, add it to your inventory. Hey, I need to buy more of this, scan the item, right into your shopping cart. We want to empower that so your staff that's on their feet in the practice, we want to keep them moving, right? We want to keep be as part of their workflow instead of being something that they have to stop seeing patients, they have to stop what they're doing, they have to go to a computer, they have to search for it, all that type of stuff. So that's the type of innovation that we're always looking to do.
Sure, and it speaks to that efficiency piece, going back to that again, and doing work while you're at work. So you're not keeping people after hours. Oh, I need to catch up on inventory. No, go home, be with your family. Let's
The
do
amount,
it in a better
the amount of practitioners that I've said, yeah, I order my supplies with a glass of wine while I'm watching TV at night. Like, please stop.
Please don't do that.
Don't. Please don't. Oh, I wait for my admin day. Oh, please don't. If your ordering takes more than 20 minutes a day, you're doing it wrong. It should be efficient. It should be something that is you press play and it's as automated as possible.
All
Mm,
pieces that come back to optimizing from location one, or hey, if you're past location one, it's not too late, like you
mhm.
said.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot about hard savings, but want to make this part explicit. We keep coming back to efficiency, right? We did a study where with the efficiency that we put in, we're looking at practices that are saving about 75% on this task when they have an e-procurement solution in place. Just because it's something that they're not going back, they're not placing orders, they're not doing a lot of different types of receiving metrics, all that type of stuff. It's consistent for them. And that's not just at the practice level, but that's going all the way up because, again, you have a centralized tool, you have people doing the same things, then you're able to gather centralized reporting and centralized information and centralize that type of thing so that it's easier for you to close your books for AP teams at the end of the month. It's easier for a CFO to see what's financially going on in spend management or a COO to figure out how they need to actually change things internally. You're not spending a lot of time doing all of that data collection as well. So there's a lot of hidden savings that practices benefit from when they're introducing, a spend management system because there's a lot of things baked in that are just part of day-to-day practices that they don't really think about, that we can remove a lot of that friction.
I'm
So,
really glad that you brought up the reporting piece because that's critical. How do we know that these items, how do we know that they're working? How do we know they're working? So being able to pull reports, compare that to last month, looking ahead to the future, all critical aspects. So I'm excited. I love what you're doing and I'm happy that you're able to share it with us. But before we go, I will ask you to give us your 30 seconds of your best advice on supply management for our listeners. I know it's a lot to squeeze into 30 seconds.
My best advice actually is fairly simple. Start where you are. So if you don't have a solution, get a solution. Don't wait. Don't wait till next year's budget or anything like that. I promise you it's going to pay for itself very quickly within the first month that you buy it and actually go live with it. So don't wait to execute on this. The other piece of this is if you already have some sort of structure or solution in place, think about the more minute details that might be passing you by. Can you manage each individual practice as an individual practice, right? There's nuances within your business that sometimes people just kind of put a blanket on, or they have a technology that's not quite up to snuff where they're missing on those nuances. And so they're not actually getting as much out of it as possible. If you're sitting there fighting with your pricing or your vendors, or support's not getting back to you, or you don't have access to really good reporting, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity. So that would be the other piece that I would look at is it really benefiting your business, or are you having to work around some of those holes? So it depends on where you are, but there's always something that you can do to save more money and to get leaner so that you're actually putting that revenue back into your business.
Great advice. And missed opportunities impact your cash flow every time. Well, Alison, this is really valuable info for our listeners to think about, and we really appreciate all that you shared with us today. Good conversation. What is the best way to get in touch with you?
Connect@methodusa.com is email that goes out to every employee. So you will find somebody, but folks are more than welcome to follow me on LinkedIn. I'm just Alison Farber on there, or you can also email me. It's firstname.lastname@methodusa.com. So,
Perfect. Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much. I will link all of your contact in the show notes. So be sure to reach out to Alison and the team at Method to start exploring how they can support you and help you hold on to your hard-earned cash. Because as y'all know, we're big advocates of using the best available resources and experts we bring on the show. They're here to help grow your business, and that means for whatever your next step may be. So give them a call. And thank you again, Alison. We really appreciate you.
Thanks, Jamie. It was a pleasure. Appreciate you.
Well, as always, if you'd like to schedule some time to learn about any of our Polaris expert advisory services, or maybe there's a topic we haven't covered that you'd like to hear about, you can send us an email to info@polarishealthcarepartners.com, or you can reach us by visiting our website at polarishealthcarepartners.com. Thanks so much for being a loyal listener and subscriber. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you on the next episode of the Group Practice Accelerator Podcast.